Design.
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 Design means to plan.
Human.
Substance.
Technology.
Designing for a better future.
What is design really?
Let's talk about design.
Making an impact in the world.
The power of design to improve life.
Design to survive.
As humanity has progressed, we've made our mark on the Earth, sprawling across the planet, taming and consuming almost every natural resource we encounter. We've constructed cities with endless horizons, mined deep into the Earth for valuables to burn and exchange, and cleared whole ecosystems for food and farming space. For centuries, we've heedlessly grown with little reflection. Capitalism trumped conservation, and we reassured ourselves we can always produce more. We've climbed our way to the top of the food chain, but under the sheer weight of our egos and desires, the links are beginning to break. From indigenous communities with millennia of experience to scientists with hard data, we were warned, but we didn't listen.
Carbon dioxide levels are at record highs. Today we are 1.2 degrees hotter than before the Industrial Revolution.
For years, we associated conservation with Greenpeace scaling whaling ships. Conservation was an issue for radicals and had no place in our daily lives. It's only now, faced with our own mortality, we finally recognise the urgency. The time of gentle admiration for nature, nurtured by years of David Attenborough,
we are about to witness one of the great phenomena of the natural world,
has been replaced with Greta Thunberg's harsh condemnation of our complacency.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
Today, we're trying to stem the damage by introducing circular systems, prioritising clean energy, and even swapping our beef burgers for plant-based ones. But even with widespread adoption, will it be enough to curb our crushing impact? While reducing consumption as a global society will no doubt make a difference, others feel we need better answers. Exploration has been the road to world-changing discoveries, whether it's trekking to the most remote glaciers, scouring the harshest deserts, or diving to the deepest parts of the oceans. Pushing boundaries has always led to groundbreaking innovation. Will embracing the pioneer end our conservation crises? And can we find new answers by going where no human has gone before? Welcome to Can Design Save Us, a series exploring design as a pioneering force for good. We dive into the most pressing problems of our time and meet people using design to solve them. We explore the good, bad, complex, and controversial. My name is Leslie Price, host from the Index Project, and my guest today is designer Yves Bahar. Bahar is one of today's most celebrated designers and a champion for sustainability. His company Fuse Project has designed for some of the world's most iconic brands and organizations, such as Dyson, Nike, and UNESCO. His latest head-turning project is Proteus, a futuristic underwater research station designed with renowned ocean explorer Fabien Casteau. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a real honor and a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I would love to start by sort of going back to the beginning of your career, I guess we would say. You've been a sustainability advocate pretty much, I guess, all your career, if you would say that. When did you sort of recognize the importance of dedicating your skills to, I guess, social and environmental causes?
Well, I think I grew up in Switzerland, and there's a lot of institutions in Switzerland that are almost more important than the government. I grew up next to the United Nations, next to the Red Cross, next to organizations like Médecins Sans Frontières, and it just feels like when I was a child, you heard more about what those organizations were doing than I would say the sort of standard politics of the government. And so I think it's always been a part of my childhood, my awareness, growing up on the lake, growing up in a natural environment. You could see, you could feel, the changes. You could feel when things were getting better. You could also obviously see and feel when things were getting worse.
It sounds like a very idyllic childhood. I mean, I've never been to Switzerland. It's just sort of the cliches you hear about the beautiful nature there. But how long have you been living in the States, just out of curiosity?
I've been in San Francisco and California now for 25 years, even a little more than that. So, it's also a very idyllic place. We have beautiful nature, we have the ocean, we have incredible amounts of green spaces that have been, protected and that have been really taken care of, so that, people, everyone has access to it. So, I was very attracted to San Francisco and the whole Northern California area, very much because it had access to incredible nature and the ocean.
Yeah, you haven't quite lost the accent yet.
Not entirely. Not entirely. That's a lifelong endeavor as well.
An endeavor. But you had a really good point last time that you made, that you mentioned 80% of the sustainability decisions are made at the design stage and the early development stage of a project. Could you maybe just elaborate a bit on that, I guess, for people who aren't designers, to sort of figure out how much weight you guys have on that aspect?
Absolutely. So if you're building a new product, if you're building a new service, if you're trying to deliver, a business, to people, there's a period of time when you're in development, where you're at the conception stage, and 80% of the sustainability decisions are made at this early stage of a project or a business. And designers are often present, and designers have a huge influence. I'm not saying that designers are making all the decisions, but certainly we can point at things. We can bring solutions to the table. We can be kind of a bit of a lightning rod, for the company to realize there are different paths, and some paths may be more of the unknown, more around sustainability, and making companies comfortable getting on that path is, I think, a role that we have to play as designers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been acquainted with your work, at least the Index Award has for quite a while. I think we had Verbienne in, was it 2011? That's the free customizable glasses for children. We also had one laptop per child, a low-cost laptop. And then we had the sustainable packaging for Puma's clever little bag. And then your latest project to enter the 2021 pipeline is Proteus, which, as we talked about earlier, what I guess you guys have dubbed the underwater version of the International Space Station. It's a huge project. How did it come about?
Well, it came about, as you said, I've always clearly stated and tried to integrate sustainability in all of our projects, not just the projects that pronounce themselves as being about the environment or sustainability. And you mentioned the clever little bag, which was just a shoebox for Puma, and we were able to significantly reduce its footprint by 50%, as well as shipping costs and etc. But so this is a practice. This is something that we work on every project. And having stated that, I got to meet Fabien Cousteau, and I got to share with him my admiration for his grandfather's work, Jacques Cousteau, and his family's work since. And there is a real sense. I think it's a universal sense. I don't think it's just people who are connected to the oceans or even sustainability, that we don't know enough about the oceans, that in fact 95% of the oceans are undiscovered, which is really incredible to think about. And at the same time, there's such an emphasis on going to outer space, visiting other planets, and even colonizing Mars. And there's a sense of excitement and discovery there. And I think, our analysis is not only it is absolutely needed to discover more, understand more about our oceans so we can protect them, but it's also essential to create enthusiasm and excitement and create a beacon of what future ocean exploration should be. And that is something that certainly the ISS, the International Space Station, and SpaceX and NASA and others are doing. So how do we create our own sort of energy and interest and get young people and all people really, but as well as schools and universities to participate in an international fashion to this exciting new direction?
I mean, the idea is that it essentially could be, I guess, a home or a working home for scientists, government agencies, corporations, and so on to conduct this research. I think last time we talked, you mentioned that they could potentially live there for up to 2 weeks. But what kind of design choices did you have to make to sort of, make it into a home or sort of somewhere that they could comfortably be for longer periods?
So it was, really fascinating to work with Fabien Cousteau. He held for a while the record of the longest time anyone's been underwater in a really old underwater station, one that dates back to the 70s or 80s. That's very uncomfortable, very dark, very humid, and very small. So clearly, if we are able to use new technologies, new manufacturing, new underwater techniques for space that is comfortable, that is well lit, that is social, where other people can share the space with you and work with you, I think we would entirely change the attractiveness and the speed at which research is done underwater. If you're doing research from the ocean surface, it takes you a whole day between diving, decompression, and coming back to the surface. It takes you a whole day for an hour, of work. Whereas when you're in Proteus, you're already at a certain depth, in this case at 60 feet underwater, and hence you don't need decompression, and you can work all day long and get back in the station and work on the analysis of your research, immediately. So the advantages in terms of accelerating that research, accelerating the rate at which you can work and make discoveries is tremendous. So it's very much, it's similar, if you think of it, to the ISS, where you have a space station, and once you're up there, the cost of going out of going into space is much lower if you stay up there for a while rather than go back and forth.
Yeah, I like the at least the renderings, and you showed me a little model last time that there were sort of these little pods that you could attach. I thought that was just a brilliant sort of design that they could come down and essentially attach themselves and then I guess depart again after they're done. It's quite funny that you sort of mentioned the space exploration. I imagine there are some similarities, particularly when you're sort of dealing with a very intense atmospheric pressure down there as well with the sort of structure you're creating.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Proteus is really made out of one main area, which has on the sort of downstairs floor has access for the small submarine. Has a moon pool, which is a moon pool is an easy way for divers to sort of come in and out of the of Proteus. And then on the upstairs floors, it has meeting areas and a kitchen and living quarters and more of a social space. So the space is divided between the downstairs, which is workspaces, research labs, and the upstairs. The pods are important as different teams and different universities, different governmental agencies can add research equipment for some time. So pods can be added or subtracted over time. And some of the pods, again, may be provided by universities or science groups that need specific instrumentation for their research aims. And the idea is that the station will be able to expand or contract by swapping these pods and these labs for different types of research. Each of these pods will have a different function. The pods also are where the aquanauts, as we call them,
it's a great name,
will be sleeping and will have their own quarters. So the main spaces are really the social spaces, and the pods are more of the private areas for labs, for the team members, the aquanauts that are underwater.
I mean, how long has the project been in development? I'm not sure how much you can share. I'm more just curious, was there any sort of diving experience that you guys could do, or is it very much sort of sparring with Fabian to sort of figure out, okay, how do we design this thing?
Well, I spent a lot of time with Fabian talking about his experiences living in these structures under the ocean. We actually had a diving trip planned about a little bit over a year ago at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, and unfortunately, obviously, it had to be pushed back.
Yeah.
But now with reopenings that are happening in the Caribbean, and in particular where the site has been chosen and agreed upon by Curacao and its government, there are now trips for going on their surveying trips to research those areas that have been chosen and agreed upon. So we did. I guess we did spend a lot of time in Zoom environments. With Fabian, rather than being underwater. But I look forward to diving with him hopefully soon.
Yeah, hopefully soon. I thought it was really beautiful how you sort of talked about Cousteau, that he sort of catalyzed young people like you, as you mentioned, and that you sort of hope that Proteus will do the same for the next generation. You certainly feel that way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as a child, I was riveted by these early underwater movies and discoveries, and seeing the animals, as well as seeing some of the changes that Jacques Cousteau was really pointing at. And while there was a message of hope, there was also a message of urgency. And this is back in the 70s when I was when I was watching these. But there were other fascinating pieces of literature for me. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the Jules Verne books were very huge inspirations to me. And there is certainly a fantasy about the world underwater, which is similar to science fiction in some ways, but it's science fiction on our own planet. And to me, my admiration and my fascination from my childhood is still very much there. And in many ways, Fabian, my hope and my support of the project with Fabien Cousteau is also to re-energize the fascination, the interest of young people and school children. And for that, for that effect, we a big part of Proteus is to have a communication while Fabian and others are within the station, and being able to see and hear and talk to aquanauts underwater and see their work, I think will be very important to continue to raise the awareness and gather further support for oceans exploration.
Yeah, absolutely. Another point is we often, whenever we sort of, I think it's interesting you mentioned science fiction, because whenever we sort of have these far-fetched moonshot ideas, sometimes we get comments, people sort of say, why aren't we solving these immediate problems before we go breaking new ground, right? But then, of course, without pushing these boundaries, we can't achieve this great innovation. I'm just wondering, so what's your take on that? I mean, have you ever received those comments or sort of not pushback, but sort of questioning, okay, why do we push the boundaries so far when we have so many other things to solve?
Well, it seems to me that taking care of our environment and the ocean is an urgent thing to solve.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think scientists, environmentalists, and I think the general public was, actually probably agrees with the notion that this should have been solved yesterday.
Yes,
and that this is an urgent call to action. So, the Proteus, as well as many other projects that we've worked on, tend to have, I think, a sort of a really positive and exciting element to them, and maybe a bit of a futuristic take on them. But all I hear isn't people telling us, oh, there are more urgent things to look at. All I hear is, how quickly can we do this? How soon can this be a reality? How soon can we see progress in our knowledge of, again, our Earth, our oceans, and its protection? So I guess, you could say there are, maybe there are more immediate things that need taken care of in our everyday lives, and certainly we're engaged in a lot of social work as well. That is absolutely critical. But I think this particular project, Proteus, is very much in need now, and I hope to see it happen as soon as possible.
Definitely. No, I think it's a bit of a case about whataboutism. I'm sure you get that the moment you sort of prop up solving one solution, someone's always going to come and say, oh, we have this other problem we need to solve. Yeah. And I mean, I think it's a really interesting point that last time we talked, it's not just about saving the oceans, but I mean about sustainability, food security, and other medical discoveries that could potentially come about once Proteus is up and running.
Absolutely. So Proteus, our oceans and their resources, and how to protect those resources, but also how to discover important food security solutions, as well as medical research, are great opportunities. And looking at our oceans for these solutions makes a lot of sense. So. Just like we want to understand how it is to live underwater for long periods of time. And a lot of the design actually was aimed at solving issues of humidity, isolation, and lack of light, for example. And, our spaces are really embodying those solutions in order to bring as much natural light as possible from the skylights, and then having actually a walkway that connects the two spaces, so people will have other forms of exercise, other forms of physical work. As you know, it's an issue in space, maybe a little bit less so underwater, but still there are issues of isolation and being static. So, there is, in a way, we want to solve problems so that we can build and have more research units like Proteus. We really see Proteus as the first, where we're going to learn a lot, where we will create a movement of support and enthusiasm for oceans research, so that we can build more of them, and solve all of the issues of livability underwater that are critical for that research to go well, and for people to want to spend time in underwater and solving problems.
Mm-hmm. I mean, speaking of immediate problems, something you guys also recently did was partner up with the Ocean Cleanup Array, and that's, of course, addressing the masses of plastic in the oceans. And you designed a pair of glasses made from ocean plastic collected from the Great Pacific Patch.
Yeah, so the Ocean Cleanup is an extraordinary organization. They're very well known for they're developing new technologies to clean up rivers and clean up the oceans, as well as providing invaluable research of where this plastic comes from that ends up in our oceans. I think it is so it's a very critical remedial effort in terms of removing the plastics out of the oceans, and the eyeglasses that we design with them are a completely circular approach to an environmental remedial effort. The more plastic we take out of the ocean, the more sunglasses we can make. The more sunglasses we sell, the more of the ocean we can clean up. So, but what another aim was to really show that what we call trash, what ends up in the ocean, is actually a precious resource that shouldn't be there in the first place. So the glasses are beautiful. They are structural. They if you in terms of functionality, they function just as well as if we had used virgin plastic. In fact, I think they're more beautiful than glasses made out of virgin plastic. But to date, we have sold enough eyeglasses to clean up half of the Pacific Garbage Patch.
I think that's the size of France or something. Was that correct? I believe I've heard that stat thrown around, which is quite depressing, but that's great news.
Yes, it's each pair of glasses that we sell allows to clean 24 football fields of the ocean in terms of the money collected from the sale. And we have, and the area of the Pacific Garbage Patch is about 600,000 football fields. So
it's big,
we have sold enough glasses for about half of that. And I encourage your listeners to go to the Ocean Cleanup website and order their own pair. They'll have something great to wear, and and will show their support for this tremendous effort as well.
I think it's also really interesting that you've talked about design sort of has this great ability to create that desirability and sort of ignite that passion about sustainability. I mean, is this where you see design making the biggest impact when we do talk about, preserving our biodiversity?
I think what design can do is accelerate the adoption of new ideas. This is a really important discovery for me that I've made many years ago, which is, the important 21st century new ideas, such as sustainability, such as equal access, such as environmental protection and innovation. These are critical ideas that design can highlight, that design can show are viable, that design can show are exciting and easy to use and easy for people to consume differently, if in the case of a product or a service. And so, people have been told for years that things are impossible, that packaging that is biodegradable is not available, is not possible, or that electric cars are not high quality, or not,
At least the Tesla changed that to some degree, I guess.
Exactly. So, good design, good service, good experience can accelerate people's understanding that, hey, this is something I can switch around, easily, something that I can adopt. And so, if design doesn't do that, then people are going to keep their preconceptions that simply this is not possible to do. But we obviously believe it is possible, and we also believe that that it is within our reach. But design needs to be involved. Design needs to be a part of that solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved a quote you said that you can't deliver the experience people want in a lesser fashion just because something needs to be sustainable. I think that was a really perfect way to sum it up.
Exactly. Thank you for the summary.
Maybe I need you to quote that for a soundbite, but yeah.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of good soundbites.
It's
don't worry
clear
about
that if things are more difficult for people to do, less convenient, or too expensive, for example, then you're creating a barrier of entry for people's needs. But I think a more sustainable or sustainable consumption needs to equate or surpass what has been made until today. In that way, it creates a way to switch, your customers and the entire population to greener and more conscious ways to consume.
I mean, with your kind of work that you do, and sort of dealing with these big global challenges on a daily basis, climate change, biodiversity loss, or so many issues looming on the horizon. I mean, do you get climate anxiety, or do you see it more as a motivator, I guess?
I certainly have a sense that there is a climate emergency. I do have a sense of urgency. I am also optimistic that if we change things, nature can, renew itself. And I've seen it happen. These were important lessons in my childhood when the lake I used to swim in and have fun in as a child became, Lake Geneva, really became too polluted to spend time in it. And after a few changes were made, including removing sulfates from cleaning products, changing agriculture methods, the lake came back. We were able to get back in there. And so I experienced, sort of this beautiful lake going from a place where, we were fishing and we were, swimming freely, to a place simply that we couldn't go in anymore. And then it came back. So I do believe that our actions can help nature renew itself. So from that standpoint, I'm optimistic, but I also understand the tremendous effort that has to be done in order to get there. It includes, obviously, I would say, people's advocacy, people demanding a change from their industry and from their government. It does also include, in addition to solutions and to good design and to new materials, being supported, it also demands enforcement from a governmental standpoint. I think those three elements put together will make a tremendous difference.
I mean, sulfates in cleaning products, that's something I think most people have no idea the impact that sort of they're inflicting on the earth. But when we talk about being optimistic, you obviously have a very established career, but then when you see this sort of new generation coming up, what are your views on that? I assume you're optimistic about the younger designers coming into the scene.
I'm optimistic about the younger designers. I'm also optimistic seeing, even younger minds, my own children, being just very demanding about, why isn't this better? And, why can't this change? And I think we need to, as people, as citizens, we need to continue to demand change, both from our industry and from our government. I think it's starting to work. I'm seeing more projects, more large companies coming to us, asking us to rethink their packaging. I don't think it's, I think social pressure, and I think also, younger leadership is going to do that. But I think the calls for action, the calls for change are going to continue to amplify and continue to put pressure on industries to take leadership. And I believe it's a matter of survival also. If you have a business and you're not considering these changes, you're missing an opportunity at leading in the field, and you'll probably be passed by the ones who have been able to create products and services that are what consumers want at the end of the day. So we need to continue to put pressure. We need to continue to design. It feels like a lot of work, but I'm certainly. I certainly believe that a younger generation and a younger generation of designers are very focused on that. That's what I see, in my mailbox. When people email me from all around the world with new ideas and with questions and with a true belief that sustainability in design is a basic. It's fundamental. It's fundamental. It's table stakes of our field.
I mean, do you reply to everyone's emails? Now I'm also curious. Sort of, if people are just sending you these questions. Yeah.
I'm sure someone is going to tell me I don't, but I really try to, especially, I get such wonderful notes from young designers, from people who tell me that, they got inspired to get into the design field by some of our social design or environmental work. It's, I definitely want to. I want to continue. I want to support, those initiatives as much as I can. So my goal is to answer every email.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear. I think it's pretty rare these days when people have very established careers that they actually give people the time of day. But on that note, it's kind of a corny question, but I really like to ask it. I mean, what would be your one piece of advice? So let's assume you're answering a whole bunch of emails right now that you would give to sort of a young designer looking to go into this field.
I think my advice is that you have to put yourself in the position to make a difference. And in order to do so, you have to go out there and acquire those skills, acquire that respect, acquire the permission to do so in some ways. And what I mean by that is you have to become excellent at something, whether it's graphic design or industrial design or science or experience design. Go get really good at that. Don't hesitate. Just go for it. And then, bring your own perspective, bring your own values to the work that you're doing. But I would say it's really important not to be paralyzed by the size and the challenge, ahead, one which is to, develop your own skills, to become self-sufficient, to have a good life, and at the same time, dedicate yourself to your beliefs. So I think it can sometimes the nature of the problems can be paralyzing.
Yeah.
Sometimes as a designer, we want things to be absolutely perfect before, we want a solution to sort of embody everything. And that's, that can be paralyzing. And I would encourage people to sort of take one step at a time towards their own excellence and towards applying, their beliefs within that excellence.
Mm-hmm. I mean, last question. I'd just love to know what you guys at Fuse Project are working on now. And then also maybe if you could tell us a bit about when we might be able to see Proteus up and running.
So we're working, currently on a lot of, I would say, applied solutions around materials, around new technologies. We, for example, presented a way to use, wood dust, basically stuff that gets thrown away from the manufacturing of wood products and paper products, and to turn that back into 3D printed wood products, for example. So 3D printed wood, when you think about 50, so we keep working on new technologies that will, essentially use waste products to create valuable, sort of rich, warm. Warm products, that, things that we need. So we continue to investigate that and to do a lot of work in that space. And in terms of Proteus, we're hoping to build Proteus in the next 2-3 years. I mean, we are, everything is ready to go in a sense. There is additional fundraising that needs to happen, and surveys and sort of technical reviews, and we're working on that with partners, both the government of Curacao as well as I would say very large and capable manufacturers of equipment, of oceans equipment, that believe our Proteus is absolutely within the realm of feasibility. So a few things need to come together, but if they do, it happens very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, 2 to 3 years is incredibly impressive. But as you mentioned, fundraising, I can imagine it is not a cheap project. Nonetheless, we're really excited to when we can see you, I guess, taking that first dive down there.
Well, that would certainly be a trip I would be very excited to do. And I think I am more excited about going to Proteus, spending some time underwater than I am going to Mars. So that I'll make that trip my life goal, rather than being blasted into space.
Yeah, I think I'd prefer that too, to be honest. But I think that's all we have time for. Thank you so much, Yves. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you, and we're so pleased to have you on the program.
Well, thank you. And thank you to Index. I think the work that you're doing in terms of supporting and highlighting, giving a stage to this type of work. This type of work is often done, with limited funds, with limited resources, with limited visibility. And what Index is doing is really providing a platform for us to shout a bit louder and clearer about these types of projects. So thank you.
No, thank you. So it's never a dull day for us. So we're just pleased we get to meet people like you and have these nice conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Can Design Save Us by the Index Project. I'm your host, Leslie Price, and this episode was produced by Cecil Cole Noaga, with music by Christina Lilleskow. Join us for the next episode where we explore how gaming can tackle the global issue of censorship.